In the ancient world of Greek mythology, many fascinating creatures have captured the imaginations of people throughout the ages, but few are as memorable as the Cyclops. These one-eyed giants, known for their immense strength and fearsome appearance, appear in many of the most famous stories from ancient Greece. From their role as skilled craftsmen to their infamous encounters with gods and heroes, the Cyclops remains a powerful symbol of both danger and ingenuity in Greek lore. Join me as we explore the origins, myths, and enduring legacy of these mythical giants. The Cyclops, whose name literally means circle-eyed or round-eyed, were beings that first appeared in the oldest of Greek myths. According to Hesiod, one of the earliest poets who wrote down the genealogies of the gods, the Cyclops were the children of Uranus, the sky god, and Gaia, the earth goddess. Uranus and Gaia were two of the primordial deities who existed before the Olympian gods. Their union produced many offspring, and among them were three Cyclops: Brontes, Steropes, and Arges. These three Cyclops were not mere monsters as often portrayed in later myths. Instead, they were seen as powerful, divine beings who had a specific purpose in the grand cosmic order. From their earliest origins, the Cyclops were associated with craftsmanship, and their creations were often tied to fire and metalwork. Their importance to the cosmos cannot be understated. Without their work, the Olympian gods may not have had the tools necessary to reign supreme over the universe. The thunderbolts of Zeus, the most powerful weapon in Greek mythology, were crafted by these one-eyed giants. They also made Poseidon's mighty trident and Hades' helmet of invisibility, both critical in the god's ability to rule the heavens, seas, and underworld. In this sense, the Cyclops can be viewed as the blacksmiths of the gods, essential to the functioning of the divine order. However, these children of Uranus and Gaia were not treated kindly by their father. Uranus, displeased with the fearsome appearance of his offspring, imprisoned them in the depths of Tartarus, the dark abyss beneath the earth. It was not until Cronus, one of Uranus's other children, rose up against him and freed the Cyclopes, that they were able to work their craft once again. This act of liberation would later come full circle when the Cyclops repaid the favor to Cronus's son Zeus during the Titanomachy, the great war between the Olympian gods and the Titans. Zeus freed the Cyclops from their imprisonment, and in return, they provided him with his famous thunderbolts, which helped him defeat Cronus and establish his rule as king of the gods. The Cyclops of Hesiod's writing were not simple creatures of brute strength. Instead, they were symbolic of the divine forces that created and shaped the universe, making them key players in the most ancient of Greek myths. Their role in the creation of the gods' weapons speaks to their association with fire, craftsmanship, and the natural elements, cementing their place as figures of power and influence in the mythological landscape. Although later myths would come to depict them in a more barbaric light, it is important to remember that the Cyclops of early Greek mythology were first and foremost creators, not destroyers. Far from the image of mindless brutes, the Cyclops were revered for their exceptional skill in craftsmanship, particularly in the realm of metallurgy. They lived and worked in the forge of the god Hephaestus, deep within the heart of Mount Etna, an active volcano on the island of Sicily. In this great fiery workshop, they toiled day and night, hammering out weapons and armor for the gods. The furnace of Mount Etna was said to roar with the sound of their hammers, striking metal, the flames rising high into the sky, lighting up the heavens. Their association with volcanoes was no accident. The Greeks believed that the fires of the earth, such as those found in volcanoes, were the result of the Cyclops working in their underground forges. The Cyclops' craftsmanship was not limited to the thunderbolts of Zeus. They also created Poseidon's trident, which could cause earthquakes and storms, and Hades' helmet of invisibility, which allowed the god of the underworld to move unseen through both the mortal and divine realms. These gifts proved essential during the Titanomachy, the great war between the Olympian gods and the Titans. With their powerful weapons, the gods were able to defeat the Titans and establish their dominion over the cosmos. In addition to their work for the gods, the Cyclops were also said to have created many of the wonders of the ancient world. The massive stone structures known as Cyclopean walls, found in places like Mycenae and Tiryns, were attributed to the Cyclopes due to their immense size and seemingly superhuman construction. These walls, made of enormous blocks of stone, were so large that the ancient Greeks believed only giants like the Cyclops could have built them. Despite their skill and their important contributions to the gods, the Cyclopes were often portrayed as solitary and somewhat removed from the rest of the divine realm. They were not typically involved in the affairs of the gods or mortals, instead choosing to live and work in isolation. This detachment, along with their fearsome appearance, contributed to their later portrayal as savage creatures in later myths. However, it is important to recognize their role as master craftsmen and creators, a far cry from the monstrous image that would later come to dominate their depiction in popular culture. One of the most famous Cyclopes in Greek mythology is Polyphemus, a character who appears in Homer's Odyssey. Polyphemus is a stark departure from the divine craftsman of earlier myths. He is portrayed as a savage and brutish creature, living alone in a cave on a remote island. Unlike the Cyclops who worked for Hephaestus and the gods, Polyphemus is a herdsman, tending to his flock of sheep in a wild and untamed land. The encounter between Odysseus and Polyphemus is one of the most well-known stories in Greek mythology. After being blown off course during his journey home from the Trojan War, Odysseus and his men land on the island of the Cyclops. They stumble upon Polyphemus's cave and, not knowing who it belongs to, help themselves to some of the food stored inside. When Polyphemus returns, he is enraged by their presence and traps them inside the cave by blocking the entrance with a massive boulder that only he can move. What follows is a tense and dangerous game of cat and mouse, as Odysseus must figure out how to escape the clutches of the Cyclops. Polyphemus is portrayed as both physically powerful and intellectually limited. He is unable to see past Odysseus's cunning and is ultimately outwitted by the hero. In one of the most famous moments of the story, Odysseus tells Polyphemus that his name is Nobody. Later, after getting the Cyclops drunk on wine, Odysseus and his men drive a sharpened stake into Polyphemus's single eye, blinding him. When the other Cyclops come to his aid, Polyphemus cries out that nobody is attacking him, causing the others to believe that he is unharmed. Odysseus and his men eventually escape by hiding under the bellies of Polyphemus's sheep as they leave the cave. As they sail away, Odysseus, in a moment of hubris, reveals his true identity to the blinded Cyclops. Enraged, Polyphemus prays to his father, the sea god Poseidon, to curse Odysseus and prevent him from ever returning home. This act sets in motion a series of events that prolong Odysseus's journey and bring further hardship to him and his crew. The story of Polyphemus serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and the importance of wit over brute strength. While Polyphemus is physically imposing, it is Odysseus's cleverness that ultimately wins the day. This encounter also marks a significant shift in how the Cyclops were viewed in Greek mythology. No longer divine craftsmen, they were now portrayed as solitary, violent creatures living on the fringes of society. As Greek mythology evolved over time, the image of the Cyclops underwent significant changes. In earlier myths, such as those told by Hesiod, the Cyclops were depicted as skilled craftsmen with a deep connection to the gods and a crucial role in shaping the cosmos. However, as stories continued to be passed down and new myths were written, the perception of the Cyclops shifted dramatically. By the time of Homer and later writers, the Cyclopes had become more associated with savagery, isolation, and brutishness. One reason for this shift in portrayal could be linked to the changing attitudes of the ancient Greeks towards the concept of the other, those who lived outside the boundaries of civilization. In early Greek society, craftsmanship and the mastery of fire were viewed as divine gifts, and the Cyclopes, as beings who embodied these talents, were revered. But as Greece became more urbanized and its people developed more complex social structures, the Cyclops came to symbolize something very different. Instead of representing the creative forces of the gods, they were increasingly associated with wild, untamed nature and the dangers that came with it. This transformation can be seen in the Cyclops Polyphemus, whose story was immortalized in Homer's Odyssey. Polyphemus is not the skilled artisan of earlier myth. Instead, he is a shepherd who lives alone in a cave, far from any kind of society. He doesn't practice any of the arts that were so central to the lives of early Cyclopses, such as metallurgy or the crafting of weapons. Rather, he is depicted as uncivilized, a creature of brute force who relies on physical power rather than intelligence or skill. His savage behavior, trapping Odysseus and his men in his cave and devouring several of them, further cements this image of the Cyclops as a symbol of Ryan, uncontrolled nature. Other later myths also portray Cyclops in a negative light. They became synonymous with the idea of the monstrous giant, creatures who were defined by their size and strength but lacked the finesse and intelligence that earlier depictions had emphasized. They were often shown as living in isolated regions, such as remote islands or deep in the wilderness, further reinforcing the idea that they existed on the fringes of society, both literally and metaphorically. In some stories, they were said to dwell in caves or mountains, living a solitary life that mirrored their removal from the structured, ordered world of the gods and mortals. Despite these changes, the Cyclops did not entirely lose their connection to the divine. Even in later myths, they continued to be linked to the gods, though in a much more limited capacity. For example, in certain versions of the story of Apollo and Asclepius, it is said that when Asclepius was killed by Zeus's thunderbolt, Apollo, in a fit of rage, killed the Cyclopes who had forged the weapon. This act of vengeance led to Apollo's temporary exile from Olympus, highlighting the fact that even in their diminished role, the Cyclops were still integral to the functioning of the divine order. In other myths, the Cyclops became associated with the building of massive stone structures known as Cyclopean walls. These walls, found in places like Mycenae and Tiryns, were so enormous and impressive that the ancient Greeks believed only giants like the Cyclops could have built them. The Cyclopean walls represent one of the few instances where the Cyclops' craftsmanship was remembered in a positive light during the later period of Greek mythology. However, by this time, the image of the Cyclops as a terrifying and primitive being had become the dominant one. overshadowing their earlier role as skilled creators. The legacy of the Cyclops is not confined to the ancient past. Over the centuries, the image of the one-eyed giant has continued to captivate artists, writers, and storytellers, leaving an indelible mark on Western culture. Even today, the Cyclops remains a powerful symbol used to represent themes of power, isolation, and the dangers of unchecked strength. From classical literature to modern pop culture, the Cyclops has evolved and endured, adapting to new contexts while retaining the core elements that made them such memorable figures in ancient mythology. One of the reasons the Cyclops has remained such a potent symbol is their ambiguity. In their earliest incarnations, the Cyclops were divine craftsmen, beings who possessed great skill and knowledge, but were feared for their immense power. As time went on, their depiction shifted toward the monstrous and savage, yet they never lost their connection to the gods. This duality, the idea that the Cyclops could be both creators and destroyers, divine and brutish, has made them endlessly adaptable to different forms of storytelling. In literature, the Cyclops has appeared in countless works beyond Homer's Odyssey. In the Roman poet Ovid's Metamorphoses, for example, Polyphemus is given a more sympathetic portrayal. In this version of the myth, Polyphemus falls in love with the sea nymph Galatea, and his brutishness is tempered by his unrequited affection for her. This softer side of the Cyclops adds a layer of complexity to the character, showing that even a creature as fearsome as Polyphemus can experience love and vulnerability. In modern literature, the Cyclops has often been used as a metaphor for the dangers of single-mindedness or a lack of perspective. The one eye of the Cyclops symbolizes a narrow, limited view of the world, a theme that has been explored in various ways by writers and philosophers throughout history. This interpretation of the Cyclops as a figure of limited perception is particularly compelling in light of their role in the Odyssey. Polyphemus, for all his strength, is ultimately undone by his inability to see beyond the immediate threat posed by Odysseus, a failure of vision that costs him dearly. The Cyclops has also made its way into the world of film and television, where it continues to capture the imagination of audiences. From Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion animation of the Cyclops in The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad to more recent depictions in the Percy Jackson series, the Cyclops has become a staple of fantasy and adventure genres. In these modern adaptations, the Cyclops is often portrayed as a monstrous antagonist, a being of immense strength and terrifying appearance who must be overcome by the hero. However, echoes of the ancient myths remain, with many depictions still referencing the Cyclops' connection to craftsmanship and fire. In addition to literature and film, the Cyclops has also found a place in art and sculpture. Ancient depictions of the Cyclops can be found on pottery, frescoes, and sculptures from the classical period, often showing them in the act of forging weapons for the gods. In these early works, the Cyclops are typically shown as strong, muscular figures, emphasizing their physical power and their role as blacksmiths. Later depictions, influenced by the Odyssey, often focus on the more monstrous aspects of the Cyclops, portraying them as fearsome giants with wild hair, a single glaring eye, and a menacing presence. The continued presence of the Cyclops in art, literature, and pop culture is a testament to the enduring power of this mythological figure. Whether portrayed as divine craftsmen or savage monsters, the Cyclops remain a compelling symbol of the forces of nature, both creative and destructive. Their ability to embody both the light of knowledge and the darkness of brute strength has allowed them to transcend their origins in ancient myth and find new life in modern storytelling. Ultimately, the Cyclops endures because they represent something fundamental about the human experience. They are creatures of immense power, yet their lack of vision, both literally and figuratively, often leads to their downfall. In this way, the Cyclops serves as a cautionary figure, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked strength and the importance of wisdom and foresight. Their legacy, rooted in the myths of ancient Greece, continues to resonate today, making them one of the most enduring and iconic figures in the world of mythology.